Hello and welcome to Football Night in New York, living room edition or kitchen edition or home office edition, as you see. I'm Jeane Coakley, joined by my friends Jonas Schwartz and Vacchiano. Hey guys, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Fantastic. You ready to talk a little
Everything's
football?
great. Can't wait for football.
Yeah.
All right, let's get right to it. As we all know, the Jets and Giants have a lot of needs to fill this offseason. So with that being said, how about we play a little game called Best Option? What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right, here's the
let's
rules.
go.
I'm going to name a position of need. You guys tell us what's the best option you think for them to fill it, whether it be through through a trade, through the draft, or free agency. Ready to go?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ralph, I'm starting with you. Giants need an offensive line. Best option.
The best option for them is easily through the draft because they're sitting with the fourth pick. They probably will get the top offensive tackle on the board, whichever one they like better. I've been reporting, and I told you that they like Tristan Wirfs, the incredibly athletic tackle from Iowa. There's also Mekhi Becton from Louisville, the massive tackle. Take your pick. There's four guys who should be in the top 15. They get whichever one they want.
You know, I agree with Ralph. I go draft here. The only thing I would look for, though, is Jedrick Wills. Obviously has the Alabama connection. We know Joe Judge has that Alabama connection with Nick Saban. A lot of people are now saying that Wills, in their mind, is the top tackle in this draft. And so I think the Giants are going to look in that direction. And it'll be fascinating to sort of watch here how much sway Joe Judge has in that draft room. I'm not sure Dave Gettleman necessarily cares about an Alabama connection, but Joe Judge, I think, calls up his old buddy, his old boss, Nick Saban, gets the good review about Wills, who everybody's loving. And I think that sort of separates everybody out, and that's where they go. Draft is how they fix this.
All right, let's talk a little Jets then, all right? Because the Jets, obviously, offensive line, they fixed it through free agency. That's what Joe Douglas is doing. But how about the Jets wide receiver position? Jonas, how do you fix it? Best option.
Here's the best option. Draft, but not in the first round. First round has got to be an offensive lineman. It's got to be one of those tackles. I don't care if it's the fourth tackle or not. But after the first round, Jeane, with everybody talking about how deep this draft is for wide receivers, the Jets, Ralph, should be able to load up on wide receivers after that. Denzel Mims, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman. Pittman, who, by the way, played with Sam Darnold at USC. All of those guys make tons of sense for the Jets to draft, and they can load up on this position for Rashad Perryman. Then you get the two tight ends, and they will have a ton of options. It looks like a bare position now, Ralph. They can stock up and make this a strength going into the year.
Yeah, I agree that it's the draft. This is why they stayed away from, offering big money to Robbie Anderson in free agency or even dipping much into that market at all, because the draft is loaded. Scouts have told me that there could be 20 to 30 receivers who will get first, second, or third round grades by most teams in the draft. I'm a little torn on what round, though, I have to admit, because at number 11, the Jets could end up with whoever they think is the best receiver. Alabama's Jerry Jeudy, the other Alabama receiver, Henry Ruggs, both of them could be sitting there for them at 11. That's got to be tempting. But, in a draft this deep, what I've seen over the years and what scouts tell me are going to happen again is that receivers are going to drop.
And what's interesting when you bring that up is, Ralph, we were on a conference call with Joe Douglas, the Jets general manager, and he talked about one of the most revealing things, and he doesn't say much that's revealing, we all know that, but one of the most revealing things that he said was that there's a dearth of offensive linemen in the NFL. He didn't say that about the receiver position.
Right.
So I think that might have shown his hand a little bit, and we know he's an offensive line, it's his background. But, so I think this is one of those situations where he sort of, showed you offensive line, and then to your point, other receivers will drop in the draft. So I think the offensive line is where they go early, wide receivers late.
All right, guys, let's move to the other side of the ball and to the other team. Now, this technically isn't a position, but the Giants need a defensive playmaker. Ralph, how do they solve that?
Well, they certainly could solve it in the first round of the draft. I have to think the draft is the way to go. Look, there are some options on the free agent market. They could try and engineer a trade for Yannick Ngakoue of Jacksonville. They certainly could look into Jadeveon Clowney, but those are really expensive options, both in terms of the financial commitment and the draft picks in the case of Ngakoue, it's too much for them. There's no indication that they want to do that. So the draft is the way to go. It's the question again of how much do they like Clemson linebacker Isaiah Simmons at number 4. I tend to think they are going to go with an offensive tackle there, which leads you to the second round. And there could be a run of edge rushers taken in the bottom of the first, which makes this a little dicey. But hey, if there's a guy like Wisconsin linebacker Zach Bond sitting there for them near the top of the second round, the value would be great. He could sit there with Kyler Fackrell, who they just signed as a free agent. That could be their edge rushing combination. Both of them would be good playmakers. So the draft, to me, I think this is what they're focusing on. I think that's the way to go.
You know, it's interesting because Bond does have the look of a classic Giant. He just comes across that way when you watch the tape of him. I'm going to give you a different kind of playmaker, though, that they could look at. Not an edge rusher, but it's a playmaker of a different kind, and it's Xavier McKinney at safety. Might be the best safety in the draft, and the Giants would get great value taking him in the second round. And then they could pair him. Let's be real. I mean, I think the safety position in that secondary is still a big area of need for the Giants. And I think there's more value going with McKinney at safety, Ralph, than trying to get an edge rusher in a draft, which is not really strong for edge rushers.
All right, let's move to the Jets. And I feel like, I mean, I've been covering this team for 10 years now, and I feel like this has always been a need. Jonas, best option to fill the need of pass rusher for the Jets.
All right, I'm choosing a different option,
Okay.
and it's called the wait option. They need to wait a year. There's no good option unless even Jadeveon Clowney at 17, 18 million a year is not the best option, because let's remember his sack total from a year ago. He didn't come anywhere near double-digit sacks. So I think the cost for Jadeveon Clowney is too much. The draft, we know the offensive line need, and really there's nobody they should take that high anyway that matches up from the edge rushing situation. After Isaiah Simmons, there's really no great playmakers or edge rushers in this draft. Ngakoue's too much, the whole thing. So I think they got to wait and trust Greg Williams. He schemed everything up great and made Jamal Adams a premier pass rusher. I would just let Greg Williams do his thing this year and then worry about it next year.
You know, there's a lot of wisdom in that, and we don't know for sure that Greg Williams even wants that monster edge rusher because of his scheme. He was able to generate a pass rush without one. So I can see your point there. I do think, though, that there are options that can help them in free agency. I don't for a second believe that Jadeveon Clowney's price is going to drop into the Jets' range. If they say he's asking now for $17, $18 million a year, I think he's going to have to cut that in half to end up with the Jets, and by then somebody else will sign him. But there's a guy out there who I think would be a good fit, and that's former Giants linebacker Marcus Golden. He was with the Giants last year, had 10.5 sacks on a one-year prove-it deal. There's been no market for him at all. He's going to have to take another one-year prove-it deal, and it might be something like the one-year $5 million deal the Jets gave to Jordan Jenkins. And if you can get Golden and Jenkins, put them each on an opposite side, that's a pretty good pass rush. Two guys who are capable of getting 8-9 sacks during the season. And even better, if you want to wait a year, you get to evaluate those two guys for a year, pick one of them to sign to a long-term deal next offseason. So it increases your options, increases the pass rush, and it shouldn't cost much at all.
And quickly remember, Patrick Owasu, who was signed by the Jets in free agency from the Ravens, he's going to play outside probably with C.J. Mosley coming back. He could be effective in that role too.
Greg Williams is going to love the guys he has. All right, as always, guys, so much fun. Best option talking football with you is virtually, so I appreciate it.
See you, Janae.
All right,
Thanks,
stay
Janae.
safe, and we'll see you next week for another edition of Football Night in New York, living room style.